Turning now to Russia's war on Ukraine and a growing threat tonight from President Vladimir Putin. It comes after Putin signed treaties illegally annexing more occupied Ukrainian territory. You can see them here on the map. He also raised the temperature in terms of nuclear threats, warning he will defend his land with all the powers at his disposal. Meantime, Kyiv has applied for membership to join NATO through an expedited process. Here to discuss it is Barry McManus, president of Global Traveler LLC, former member of the CIA. And Mr. McManus, we know you have studied Putin extensively. We appreciate you being here. President Biden, he had a direct message for Putin after his comments this morning. I want to play that for you and then get your reaction.
America and its allies are not going, let me emphasize, are not going to be intimidated, by Putin and his reckless words and threats. He's not going to scare us, and he doesn't, or intimidate us.
All right, so the president saying there also that this is a clear sign Putin is struggling. Do you agree?
First of all, thank you, Nichole, for having me here this evening. Putin is desperate. He is backed into a corner. Things have not gone the way that he had anticipated. I don't want to get into the politics of Russia and Ukraine, but I can get into the mind of Putin by thinking the Donbass region is in the heart of Russia's war with Ukraine. So what does he do? He gives us this referendum, the annexation of 4 areas in the Donbass region. He has a formal and ceremonial event. I think that's psychologically for the plug for the people of Russia. But Putin undoubtedly is fixated on the idea of the so-called referendum establishing this greater Russia.
All right, so the president says this is a sign Putin is struggling. You have studied Putin. How dangerous is a struggling Putin?
Well, psychologically, I would think, my opinion is that there is a huge difference between, for Putin, withdrawing from an occupied land and giving up land that has been formally and ceremonially absorbed in Russia. So Putin, in essence, has given us 2 choices. One, accept the new drawn lines at the border and referendums, or 2, accept an escalation in this conflict and possible nuclear risk.
So Ukraine intelligence reports are saying there is a, quote, very high risk that Putin will, in fact, use nuclear weapons. But we know that that has actually been a fear since the very beginning of this war. So why now is this high risk?
Well, I think, one, this is a waiting game on both sides. It's a game of who's going to give in first. One thing I can say about Russians in general, I think it's the virtue about the Russian psychology is patience and virtue. And I think it's going to be a game of cat and mouse. I don't think anyone knows on either side what one would do. I mean, the Ukrainian is asking for a expedited involvement into NATO. Now, will that happen in time for any major conflict? We don't know.
And would that really make a difference? Talk about the difference that would make.
Well, again, I think it'll be a difference on both sides. I don't think it'd be the advantage of Russia to use nuclear weapons of any kind, nor do I think it would be on the advantage of the West to push it to that point. I've always said from the beginning, and I don't know if it's going to be taken this way, but more of a diplomatic engagement, I think is what we want on the West. I think that's the best we can get out of this. Now, will Putin back down? I think, like anything else, it is a waiting game, is who's going to push first, push the button first. But I also say, again, that patience is the key here. Who's going to give in first? Yeah. What's going to be those ideas where the West will give in and give a little bit? Because I think everyone has to walk away with some sense of face, and I think face is very important for the Russian psyche, and I know it's very important for the Putin psyche.
Oh, absolutely. One more question for you, Mr. McManus. Sure. You just mentioned diplomatic engagement. Zelensky has said he would be willing to sit down for talks with Russia, not as long as Putin is in power, though. So what is he really saying there?
Well, Putin being in power, I mean, Putin has stepped away once before, and I think I mentioned that in another conversation with you, where this is a potential a step for Putin to sort of put his own puppet in play that can do those negotiations that makes everybody happy, or at least put this at abeyance for a while. I don't think this will go away anytime soon, and it's proven it hasn't gone away. And I think there will always be a threat for time to come. But I think everyone is hoping that some sense will come into the mind of Putin where he will sort of back down and saving face. And if that means stepping aside and putting a puppet in his place, while he still rolls the dice, because he is in charge, and he will be for the foreseeable future.
Mr. McManus, thank you as always for your time.
Thank you, Nichole.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.